Let's get started. Hi, everybody. I am Michael Munson with Forge. I'm really happy that you're all here tonight. This is the third part of three with kind of the what's that feeling. Tonight, we're going to be talking about increasing energy and moving emotions. Just a quick who am I, and then I'll share with you our agenda for the night, and we will get rolling into content. I know many of you have been here the last two times, so you can shut your ears. But hi, I'm Michael Munson with Forge. I've been doing activism and trans work for a really long time, over 30 years, doing queer work before that, doing lots of other kinds of justicey work before that. Um, and I'm happy to be here in all of my capacity with Forge and all of the other stuff that I bring from before I worked at Forge. Let me give you a quick snapshot of who Forge is. Again, most of you know this, but we're a 30-year-old trans anti-violence organization that's national in scope. We predominantly provide training and technical assistance to victim service providers and do a little bit of work to directly with trans communities and allied loved ones and the people around trans folks. So that's the very small thumbnail of who Forge is. A couple of housekeeping bits and pieces. We have language access for Spanish and English, as well as ASL. If you're having any challenges seeing or hearing what you need to access, please tap Caleb in the chat, who will be able to help you figure out what's going on. So Caleb is running the back of house tonight, and two of our other staff are here as well if you need support. Um, we're going to have some interaction tonight. Most of it's going to be reflection, and I encourage folks to join in with what you feel comfortable joining in with, or sit back, or do whatever it is that you need to do that feels right for you. We are recording tonight, and I promise you that as we have interaction, the interaction I will make sure is anonymous so that I'm not going to read out anybody's names. You can participate in ways that are not going to be revealing if you don't want to disclose who you are, and we want to protect that as well. So right now, everybody is on kind of on the mute and the no video. So the ways that you can interact with us are through chat and then through some other software that we're going to introduce in just a second. I will be following up from this session about 1, 2, and 3 sessions with some follow-up resources and links and things that you can have to look at some more. So I am really, really glad that you're here. I was glad that folks that were here last week and the week before. I'm always glad when people are here and want to share space together. We really welcome all of you to this space, whatever that means for you. We know that you have a lot of experience and knowledge, and I hope that you're here because you're curious about what we might talk about tonight, or feel playful or serious or whatever it is. We welcome all of those things into this space. We welcome your questions. We welcome your answers. Again, we welcome all of you, which might be your body and your mind and your spirit, or any bits and pieces of those parts of you that want to be in this space right now. So our agenda for the night is we're going to talk about planes and trains and inertia and maybe humans too. The planes and the trains might be a little bit more fun, but we'll talk about humans as well. We're going to then talk about sensory diets, which might be a new concept for some folks and maybe very familiar for other folks. We'll then get kind of into the heart of what you're probably expecting, which is kind of like, how do we unstick the stuck? How do we ramp up our energies? How do we move from a place of feeling depressed or low or slow in our energy to a different place that we want to be at more harmonically? We'll talk a little bit about movement, physical and emotional and mental movement. And then we're going to set up another playlist. For those of you who were here last week, we did a collective playlist about how we can slow down. So things that were music that helped us slow down. And tonight we're going to do kind of the opposite of that. So create a playlist of things that kind of move our energy up into a different place than we might be in. So I mentioned that the chat is free game for folks that want to interact in the chat. That's always a great option. And then there's going to be a couple times tonight that we'll do a poll everywhere, which sounds like it's a poll, but it's really a way for us to interact in a more anonymous way. So Caleb will put things in the chat. You'll see a QR code like this. You can access it either way. And hopefully it will be pretty easy. Most of the time people are pretty able to engage in that way. All right, so the first two sessions, we did the first one kind of on an overview of emotions, and the second one on how we can slow down a little bit when our emotions might be really intense or really strong or really high. Both of those, thanks to Caleb, are recorded on the web and available for folks to watch or share. And you can find them at our YouTube channel or on our website. Okay, let's talk about sensory diets. So this is going to be a little bit of a bridge between last time when we were looking at things, kind of slowing things down, to this time when we're looking at trying to ramp things up or add a little bit more energy into our being and our surroundings. The phrase sensory diet came about in the 80s and 90s by Patricia Wilbarger. And she developed this and kind of honed the concept of a sensory diet. And it emerged out of her work with folks who have autism. And it was derived from the principles around sensory integration and sensory processing theories. Those are big words. We're not going to talk about what those words are. We're going to talk about what it is to use and to think about a sensory diet. So let me give you a couple of examples of what it is. We're going to watch a video, but just kind of frame what it is a little bit. Sensory diets can be a lot of different things to different people with lots of different kinds of needs. So that's one of the great things. I love tools when they have like so much versatility and they can be used in so many different ways by different types of people with different needs. So let me share with you a couple of things that can like fall under this broad category of a sensory diet. So when we start to think about it, it might be like, what sensations help you feel alive or enlivened? So it might be things like the feel of a crisp iron shirt for those people who still iron. It might be that all of the socks in your drawer are lined up perfectly, not like the one that's on the screen, but all lined up perfectly. That makes you feel good, makes you feel alive when those things are happening. It might be that you have a full refrigerator full of food and things that you like to eat. It could be the smell of buttered toast. That just makes you feel like really, really good and really in body. Sorry. It could be what taps into your senses that makes you kind of like open your eyes wide and go, oh, wow, I feel really alert right now. So it could be the song that comes on the radio that you go, oh my God, I just love this song and my body has to move when I hear this song. It's those kinds of things. It could be when we look at a sensory input, what makes you feel happy, or focused, or friendly, or any emotion that you want to feel. So, like, does the sensory diet contribute to the emotional state that you want to be in? So it could be smelling that cup of coffee first thing in the morning, or at 4 in the afternoon, or at 3 in the morning. It could be that you're seeing the neighbor's dog out your window. It could be that you are getting on the bus in the morning and it's your favorite bus driver who always just makes you feel fantastic. It could be like hearing your phone make that little lovely bing sound when you get a new text message, and you know it's going to be from somebody that you care about. So when we think about things, we can think about like what helps you orient within your body and within your space. So is orienting towards your space and your body about like, what do I feel like when I'm sitting on one of those exercise balls? I love the exercise balls for me, but I don't like them for exercise, but they're great to sit on and bounce on and roll on. That might make you feel really good. It makes me feel really good. It could be that you walk down the hallway and you can touch both sides of the hallway walls. And that could just help you orient within your body. So that's a sensory way to help orient you in your body. A sensory diet could also be things like what helps us to kind of sense our bodily balance. So our literal balance of sitting up or standing up, if we're able to do those things. It might be things like if when we sit on the floor, we feel that we're balanced. We feel like we're not going to topple over. It could be that when we rock or when we move back and forth, it helps our body feel more in balance. It could be that we really feel in balance in our body when we go to a park and we maybe take a walk or we sit on the swings. I don't think they do those teeter totters anymore, which I'm aging myself a little bit about, but it could be any of those things that help us feel more in our body and balanced in our body. Um, I'm going to share with you next a short video. It's actually maybe it's kind of a medium video. It's about 5 minutes long, and it was recorded actually this morning. I was going to play a different video of the same person talking about sensory diets. This video is with Joseph Kindred, who is a therapist, a sex therapist, works with a lot of trans folks, a lot of neurospicy folks, is right now living overseas in Europe, and is a pretty cool person that has a lot to say about a lot of different things. But this is a clip of him talking about sensory diets.
Hey there. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about sensory diets and the very basics about considering starting to pay attention to having one for yourself, what you might want to, what they're useful for. Um, I work as a therapist and a coach, and I'm also a parent and a human. And it's something I tend to mention with all of my clients. And uh, for many of them, it's been very useful. And I've also done it with my own kids, with myself. The term comes from the work of occupational therapy, I think, originally. It's an idea of looking at what we might be doing throughout a day that kind of feeds our nervous system or stresses it. So, say a person that doesn't like to sit still for a long period of time, if their day looks like a sensory diet of having to just sit still in a chair a lot, they're going to eventually start to feel quite stressed in their nervous system. So we might want to figure out ways to either make movement more possible during the day or breaks of movement or something. I've kind of combined the idea of sensory diet. I often combine it with what I've learned through somatic experiencing and different kinds of trauma research and work, which is that any way that we can calm our nervous system and or feel a certain kind of pleasantness or comfort or even like soft bits of pleasure throughout a day or a week, it actually feeds our nervous system and in a sense will strengthen it to then almost kind of metabolize and eat up inner stress or tension and or help us to even process old traumas. It's pretty amazing what the body can do when we feel good. Um, I put a few notes down just to kind of help me summarize this. So basically we're trying to add calmness and comfort. We're trying to add in things that make us just feel inherently more uh, able to handle things, more able to cope with the world. You can find a lot of checklists online that might help you to identify some of the kinds of categories or activities that help you. I'll give you a few ideas and you can think of what might be useful. If you're a really visual person, sometimes having even it could just be a postcard of something you like to look at or a small printout or something you like to look at hung up. You could also have some nice art books around that you could look at the beautiful pictures in or put tracing paper over and then trace them. So visual people, if they don't have something visual in their life, then they might get stuck kind of scrolling on their phone or that kind of sensory visual thing, which isn't necessarily always as helpful. So you want to kind of look at like what would actually nourish me visually and make me feel better. Some people like temperature. So some people want to be more warm or like to have a cold drink with ice in it versus a hot tea. But some people, if they eat hot food a couple times a day or a few times a day, that actually makes their whole nervous system be calmer. So it's really worth paying attention to. Some of the other categories that people find useful are movement, like I kind of alluded to, uh, touch, which could be hugs or even the sensory feeling of certain kinds of fabric or clothing. Um, some of how you can identify this is either think of some of the favorite jobs you've had or your favorite activities to do. Like what do they involve? If you like stamp collecting, you might like really like the visual part. If you like to play sports, it might be movement or exertion that feels good. Some people, regular baths are incredibly helpful, or regular showers, and other people that wouldn't be as calming. So we want to kind of just slow down. You can either use a list or sit on your own and think through what are some of the things that actually make me incredibly happy? Like for me, when I've gone through the list, like one of the things they had on there is drinking a thick milkshake through a straw, a big straw. I actually like to have to like work to get the milkshake in my mouth, and there's something about the sensory part of the whole thing, and it's like it takes a certain other kind of effort that actually is incredibly soothing to me. So if there are stressful weeks, which there can easily be in our lives. I mean, that's something I try to add in for myself. Or you can think through, like I said, any of the other categories or see just what it is about you in particular. Some people need regular music to listen to and it makes the whole day go better. Other people need absolute silence and probably even like, something over their eyes so that everything is dark for them. They could just lay in a bed in a dark room and 40 minutes of that, 20 minutes of that, an hour of that regularly during a day makes the whole day go much, much better for them. So this is just kind of a little start to think about what do you already know about yourself? And then if you slow down and think about what might you want to add in, and also think about, what right now is stressful in your day that maybe goes against what you need in a sensory diet, and is there a way to adjust it? If you have to be in Zoom meetings a lot, could you make it that 3 or 4 times during the meeting you literally move positions or locations in your home? If your job actually involves too much standing and all that, is there a way to do some of it sitting? Is there a way to like slightly prop yourself or have breaks? So really start to look at where are the stress points. If you have chronic illness or something, there still are going to be stress points or ways that your body isn't quite getting what it needs, and you might be able to modify an activity to give you a little bit of what a healthier sensory diet would be for you. So there's a little start on that. It's something I love to talk about, and we can always talk about it more in the future.
So Joseph gave a bunch of ideas there. I started us out with a few other ideas as well. Um, and what I would love for us to do in the next 4 or 5 minutes is I really want to encourage you to kind of think about your own body, your own brain, your own mind, your own spirit, and what kinds of things nourish you? What kinds of sensory things nourish you, help you feel good, help you reach the states that you want to be in, the physical and the emotional and the spiritual places that you want to be in. And I'm guessing that some of you might be going, there are more than five senses that are like represented on this on the slide right now, and there are. So let me just really quickly go through what we most of us learned in grade school about the five senses, which are what we see, what we smell, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch. So those are the commonly known senses. And the other two that are on here are things that I referenced when I was kind of going through some examples. And one is kind of the vestibular, or our balance, or our movement. So how do we orient in our sensory sort of way about um, are we feeling physically balanced? Can we move through the world in a way that is the most comfortable for us? And then the seventh thing is about proprioception. So it's kind of our body awareness. Are we aware where our body is in relation to other things? Are we aware where our body is in relation to ourselves? So kind of are we able to pay attention, or can we pay attention to where and what our body is doing? And if it is interacting with other people or other things, is that where we want it to be in that interaction? So I would love for us to take about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes and paper, pen if you'd like, your own brain if you'd like, your computer, anything that you'd like to kind of capture some of your thoughts. And then when we come back in a few minutes, I would love for folks to share out if you'd like to share any of what you reflected on. So let's take about 4 minutes. Right, thank you. I would love to hear, and it would be great for other people to also get to experience some of what you might have thought about that fits into your sensory diet that helps fuel you or helps you maintain the state that you would most like to be in. Um, let's use the chat for this, and if folks would like to share any of the things that you came up with on your list, or if you don't want to be self-disclosing, it might be something that that you think would be really useful for somebody else. And I will read out what comes in the chat so that we can all hear and see it. So, what did you all think about? Smell and taste of coffee in the morning. Yeah. Um, Site clean, clutter-free spaces, natural sunlight. Icy water to drink. The smell of rain. Oh, yes, the smell of rain is so beautiful and wonderful. A window to look out of. Wearing natural fibers. Yeah, getting that rush from a good bike ride or going to the skate park. Yep. Or 7-Eleven Slurpee hitting the roof of your mouth. Yeah. Flower arrangements. Feeling clean after a shower. The sound of a TV. So comfort shows. Yeah, hot tea. Hand lotion. Mhm. Yeah, those are fantastic things. Yeah, a blanket. And as I'm looking at this list, I think that some people, and you probably that when you're putting them in here too, have maybe a certain kind of hand lotion that you do like, or the smell of a certain rain when it's a certain temperature outside, or a certain volume of rain that's coming down that makes certain sense. I mean, I think that sometimes when we dig into it, we might actually feel like we know exactly like the type of rock that we want in our hand, the exact blanket that makes us feel the best. It's either the right weight, the right warmth, the right softness or bristliness. So yeah, thank you for all the ideas. And I encourage folks to think about this some more when we're done and think about kind of honing in on what are those specific things that feed you, that help you feel really good and nurtured and healed in some ways that talking doesn't do, or some of the other things that we do in our day-to-day life don't necessarily support. Thanks, everybody. So we've already started talking about what the kind of the state is that we're talking about tonight, about kind of where we want to move from and where we want to move to. So, tonight we're kind of looking at that. What happens when we're feeling low or blue or slow or not having that kind of energetic space that we want to be in? When is it that we're feeling depressed or worried or concerned? And we might feel kind of paralyzed or immobile or feeling like we can't do the things that we either want to do or need to do. Our brain chemistry might be really sluggish. Those chemicals that are in our brain are firing out the chemicals that we don't really want to have in our brain right then. And we really want to be able to engage in life in a little bit more active way, potentially, or at least not be so feeling unable to do things. That's my capture of kind of the state that we're talking about wanting to move from. And I bet you all have kind of a picture in your mind of like when you're feeling that way, whatever that way is. So I'd like you to just kind of reflect on that as we then start to now talk about what are some of the ways that we can move out of those places that are sad, blue, low, slow, and any of those things. And again, I wanted to reaffirm that there's nothing wrong in being in those states. And sometimes it's a really good thing. It feels really good to be in those states because we feel sad. We want to feel sad sometimes. And that's totally good. So what we're talking about tonight is when we don't want to feel that way, when we really want to be able to feel more happy or more energetic or feel that the world is not so devastating. Some of those things we want to move into a different place. So we're going to start by talking about Newton. So some of us might remember our high school or grade school or middle school physics and science classes when Newton talked about the law of inertia. So the first law from Newton. And I don't want to be too simplistic about things, but the first law says, an object at rest stays in rest, an object in motion stays in motion. Really simplistic concept. We all are affected by it every single day. But it's really reflective a little bit about what our mental health is sometimes, or what our mental health state is, and how it's really hard sometimes when our brain is in that slower, lower, depressive state. It's really hard to get things moving into a different way. So this is certainly funny, but also really serious. Of kind of the body at rest wants to stay at rest. Sometimes when we get in bed at night, or whenever we go to bed, we don't want to get up. We want to stay in bed because it's comfortable. Sometimes we want to stay in bed because we're depressed. So it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of true, right? Of our bodies settle into something and it feels really good sometimes, and it's really hard to change that pattern. We could also look at kind of the inertia of things like the big hippo on a swing, of like, just thinking about how easily and beautifully it would be to stay in motion when you've got a lot of mass, and you're playful and you're feeling really good, and moving in your body, and moving in this case on a swing. So I'm not trying to be glib about emotional states, but I think there's a lot of comparison. And let me share with you another analogy. And again, we're going to talk about humans in a second, but when we think about trains are really, really interesting. So this is going to be probably a repeat for many of you, but like, when we think about a long train, like a train that has dozens and dozens of cars, um, they don't just like automatically start and go 70 miles an hour, right? I think a lot of us have probably heard when trains kind of back up, like they're at rest and they kind of back up and they make these really, really loud clanking noises, and then they clank once and they clank again and they clank again, as they're backing up. And sometimes we don't know what it is, but it's kind of irritating sometimes, or it's kind of neat depending on our framework. Um, and so when they're doing that, what they're doing is they're going to get themselves ready to pull one car at a time. So they have to back up in order to be able to pull one car at a time. So how they do that is through these things called couplers, and they may not look like this anymore, but this is kind of an older version of a coupler. It's basically kind of like a link. It's something that holds together the two trains, the two train cars, but it has some slack in it, so it can they can be kind of loose between each other, or they can be really tight and taut. So what the train is doing by backing up is it's allowing the engine then to pull the first car as only the one car next to it. That makes sense. So it's like it's pulling only the weight of one car, which is going to be a lot easier than to pull the weight of 80 cars, for example. Um, and what happens is what we're kind of describing is what's called static friction. So it's really hard to move something that's really heavy and that's not in motion. So we want to make the load as light as possible to move, again, that first car, and then we can move the next car, and then the next car. And that's what those couplers are doing, is it's allowing the train to pull one car at a time, and then it will gain more momentum, and it will be able to go faster and be able to pick up more cars and all that other happy stuff. So when we think about kind of the trains model, and apply it to our mental health, a lot of times when we're this big long train, it's really hard to get moving. It's really hard to get all of our body or all of our mind ready to move from wherever we are, that we are at rest. So just an analogy for us to kind of keep in mind about what it's like, that we might need to go backwards a little bit. We might need to pull that slack together so that it's taut. And we might need to do things one car at a time, one small little bit at a time, in order to gain that momentum that we need and we want in our life. All right. So we know that humans are different than trains, at least most of the time. But again, let's just kind of keep in mind that sometimes things are really heavy, things are really hard to get moving, and it's okay. It's hard to have, I think, self-acceptance sometimes about that, but it's okay if it's really hard. And there's some ways that we can try to stimulate and make it a little bit easier. And part of that, it might be taking really small chunks at a time, and acknowledging that is movement when we take these little steps in the direction that we would like to go in. So last night, I heard this really great term of micro thriving, and I added it in today because I think it's a really fascinating concept. So it's kind of like pulling off of what we talked about with the trains, about like this little bit of like pulling one car and then the other. So maybe we can't imagine right now if we're feeling blue or sad or down, we might not be able to fully imagine what it would be like to be more energetic, more high emotions, more happy emotions, because we're feeling in that really sad place. So it might be really hard for us to get from where we are to where we want to be. But like the train, we can, maybe think about like, what are those little teeny things? What are those micro things that can make us feel a little bit better, that maybe make us feel a little bit more like thriving, if thriving is a word that you resonate with. Um, so it's just a really lovely way to think about how we may want to not have like this really huge goal of, hey, I'm going to go ride my bike. I couldn't ride my bike anywhere right now, but like, maybe I could get out of bed. And that's a step towards feeling and being in the spot that I would like to be in. So again, just kind of like looking at what happens if we put micro in front of any of the words that we're thinking about wanting to be at. And what does that do to our brain and how does that help us actually get to where we would like to go? All right, so I would love to hear some of your ideas. So we all know that we get stuck some places. We get feeling immobile, we feel frozen, we feel depressed, we feel listless. Those are common things that a lot of us feel at some point. And we might want to not feel those ways. So I'd like to open up a poll everywhere thing. So Kayla's going to pop it into the chat. Um, and a QR code will come up on the screen as well. So what are some of the things that can help you move or help a person move from that stuck place to a place that is less stuck, has more energy, is more enlivened in some way? So that concept can mean different things to different people, but how do you move from the stuck place, the low energy, the depressed state, to a place that's not that? Music. Excellent. And if you can't access Poll Everywhere, the chat is just fine as well. So I will watch both of them. So wiggle your toes. Excellent. Positive affirmations. Yep. Yep. To stretch. Exactly. TV. What other things help you or someone you know move from that stuck place to a less stuck place? Going outside. Exactly. Yeah. Find a smaller goal to reach. Yeah. Shake your hands out. Have a glass of wine. Dancing. Mhm. What other things? Spray the counters and clean. Yeah. Shower or wash your face. Self hugs. Yep. Connect with a friend or laugh. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Those are excellent things. Excellent. Stick feet in sand or grass. Mhm. Make a meal. Yeah. All of those things are perfect and beautiful. And you'll see that a lot of them have the connections back to the sensory diet, and a couple of things that we're going to talk about next. Thank you. Yeah, change your clothes, have sunlight, reach out with a text. All of those things, perfect. Y'all can keep on going with it. You'll be able to see it later, so you can kind of review it if you'd like to. Those are excellent things. Let me add a couple of things that might not have been added. So I'm going to try to make sure that I remember what you all just said, as well as kind of some of the things that I wanted to make sure that got brought forward a little bit. So one of them is about having routines or patterns. So it's kind of solidifying or creating a base. So sometimes those patterns and those routines will help us do those things even when we're feeling really down, really low, and it's really hard for us to do it. But if it's a routine, we might do it anyway, and that might help us boost up a little bit. We might want to do things like have a timer. So if we're feeling alert and oriented enough and able to set a timer, we might say, okay, I'm going to feel as down and depressed and whatever it is I'm feeling for the next 15 minutes or the next 2 hours. And then when the timer goes off, you know what? I'm going to try to work it up, and I'm going to try to go take a shower, and I'm going to try to go do something that's going to move me a little bit. That's going to move me into a different emotional place and maybe into a different physical space. Many of you mentioned physical movement, so finding something that's physical, small, medium, large, can be a really useful way to get unstuck or at least less stuck. I put ADLs here, so activities of daily living. So that might be like taking a shower, making sure that you can make a meal and get fed. Some of those things that we do and we sometimes don't even think about that we're doing them. Um, but those can help us get a little bit less stuck. Several of you mentioned showers or baths. We can get outside. So several of you mentioned that as well. So like what happens when we get some fresh air or some sunlight, or we literally are just stepping out of the place that we're in that we might literally be feeling stuck in or that we've been in for a long time. And we can use things like food and meds and alcohol or chemicals. And I mean use in a lot of different ways. If we're really hungry, having some food might help us feel a lot better because we're hungry and we need to have food to survive. Taking our meds is a really important thing. Somebody mentioned, drinking wine or alcohol. That certainly is something that really works for a lot of people. Alcohol, just as a reminder, is a depressant, so it might slow things down. But for some people, if it helps alter your mood, um, go for it, right? And kind of in a harm reduction way, I certainly know of a bunch of people that use things like over-the-counter Sudafed, which is a stimulant, and so it's like that is sometimes helpful for some people when they're feeling really, that inertia is really stuck. So there's some ways that we can use over-the-counter things or not over-the-counter things that can help give us a boost, because sometimes we need a chemical boost as well as some of those things that we can do with our body and our brains. I just want to remind us too that sometimes we rely on ourselves and we think like I'm the only one that can get me out of this state, and that's true to some extent. But we do live in a world where there are other people, and I think most of us have at least one person that we might sort of kind of like, or that we might sort of kind of feel okay about connecting with at some level. And we probably will do another webinar on kind of those connection pieces and how other people can be part of our healing process, part of our emotional regulation process. But I just wanted to put out there and remind us all that if you have friends in your life, if you know of people that are in places that might need your help, that we can be there for each other. And sometimes even when the world is really tough, like it is right now, those connections might mean a lot more. And they don't have to be complicated. They don't have to be complex. They don't have to have a lot of skill from either person. Sometimes just being there with somebody can make a really big difference in helping folks get unstuck. So there's been a lot of talk about movement from the very beginning through to now. So one of the things that can really help people get unstuck, and it's true for almost everybody, almost all the time. Sometimes we can't get ourselves to move, physically moving our bodies, but it's a really good way to move from that blue state, that sad state, that stuck state into a place that's less so. Um, Most of us, even with severe disabilities or mobility challenges, can do some form of movement, um, some form. And so I want us to think in really creative ways about what some of those small movements are, some of those large movements are, movements that take into consideration what our bodily realities are, as well as what we're emotionally able to do at different times and places. So again, we don't have to be athletic. We don't have to be any of those things to be able to move our bodies. Sometimes it might be doing things like tapping your finger on your other hand or on part of your body or on a table. That's moving when we're tapping something. It might be just squeezing our hand or our fingers together or our thighs together. Anything that's going to engage our muscles in some way is moving in some way. I love the fact that somebody said wiggling your toes because that was on my list to bring up here of like, that's a small movement to wiggle your toes. That's more movement than you might have been doing before. And that might be enough, that wiggling your toes, to start feeling a little bit different and a little bit less down or slowed down. So I would love to hear what you all are thinking. I know many of you have kind of, mentioned movement as we've moved along. I'd like to take maybe just a couple of minutes. In the worksheet, you don't need to have the worksheet to do it, but the worksheet has small, medium, and large, three different columns. And to just kind of jot down some things that you think of that you can do that are small movements like the wiggle your toes, or the medium movements, which might be like getting out of bed or going and having a shower, or making a meal. And then the big things could be like going out for a, a run or a stroll or a roll. So small, medium, large. Let's take just a couple of minutes to do this, and then we'll come back together and share and make a playlist then. One of the things that's kind of a small and a medium thing for me, and it kind of depends on what my body is like, is when I wake up in the morning, I don't wake up hardly ever. I don't wake up hardly ever cheerful. I don't sleep very well at night, and my body is kind of creaky and whatever. So for me, moving, like rolling over, is sometimes the movement that helps unstick me, literally, physically, as well as emotionally. So sometimes it's as much as just rolling over in bed. So I'm seeing other things coming in the chat. So a fidget toy, medium, giving myself a pedicure. Cool idea. Yeah. What are some other movement things? Stretching in bed, checking on the garden. Yeah. I love like the checking on the garden could be a whole bunch of different things, right? It could be just going out and looking at it. It could be touching. It could be lots of different things that have different ranges of movement. Excellent. Cleaning. Yeah. And cleaning always gives like a good result at the end. And sometimes it's physical and it feels good. Yeah, crocheting, knitting, weeding, garden, sewing a new patch onto your jacket, checking the mail. Excellent. Those are all great things, right? They move your body a little bit. Sometimes they have a good result when you get done with moving your body. watering indoor plants. Excellent. Cool. Really great. Thank you. Let's do another set of kind of brainstorming things and let's make a playlist. So if you were here last week, we did this playlist, which was fantastic. And it was kind of about what kind of music or sounds help us kind of slow down a little bit. And this time we're going to do a ramping up. So let me just briefly share with you a little bit about what Padlet is for those of you who are not familiar. Caleb put the link into the chat, and you can go to it on your phone or on a web browser, and you're going to see a screen that has multiple of these categories of different types of music, and you can click on that little plus button and add a song or a piece of music that you feel fits in that category and that does something to help ramp you up. So let's do it together. And Caleb's going to flip around, and we're going to share Caleb's screen, and so we can kind of watch together. So let's. I'm just going to be quiet and let us all populate the Padlet for maybe the next couple of minutes, and then we'll go through and look at all of them and share the experience. Caleb, are you able to share your screen? Thank you. I'm going to pull us back together a little bit. This Padlet is going to be open. We're also going to collect all of these and send them out to you. Caleb, I'm wondering if you could kind of read out some of what people have put in so that people can kind of take take the songs into their brains.
Definitely. I see under rock a lot of them. Walking on Sunshine, Bizarre Love Triangle by New Order, Take It Day by Day by Courtney Barnett, Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls. I'm guessing I love that song. This is the Day by It's My Life by Bon Jovi, Just Can't Get Enough by Depeche Mode. Under folk, we've got Emmylou by First Aid Kit. Hip hop, we have Someone to Call My Lover by Janet Jackson. Under ambient, there's Play Palette by Instupendo, Avril 14 by Aphex Twin. And then under another category, we have Good Feeling by Nola A Day, Dance Yourself Clean by LCD Sound System, and looks like Respawn by Louder, or vice versa. And then I just saw a couple come in yesterday by No Name, and then also The Marriage of Figaro by Mozart.
Woohoo. Way cool. Thank you, Caleb, and thank you all for like adding your music. One of the things that we did, Caleb, if you can find the URL for it, we Caleb wrote a blog post that included the music from last week's session, and it's on our Trans Survivors blog. And we will do the same thing with this one and make sure that you all get a copy of what you all created. You just pop back to my screen for a second. So as we wrap up tonight, I wanted to thank you all for being here and our interpreters for making our events more accessible for everybody. And we really care about your feedback. So when we close out tonight, you'll automatically get redirected to the evaluation for tonight. We really care about what you have to say and would really like to know more about what you'd like in the future. So this is like the end of our third of three on emotions, and I'm really glad that you were part of this event and we could have some interaction around some very small ways that we can shift our emotions into places that we might want to be in a different way. I'd love to do kind of a one-word check-in again. So we're going to use the poll everywhere, and if you can't access that, the chat is fine as well. So if you could share one word about how you are feeling right now, that would be super. Grateful, smiley, settled, mhm. Recharged, raw, mhm. Understood, inspired. Mhm. Any other words that calm? Mhm. Renewed. Beautiful words. Thank you for sharing with us all how you're feeling. And thank you all again for being here tonight. We look forward to seeing you at other events coming up. We've got a couple more that are happening in May, which we will share with you all in the follow-up email. And I know most of you are on our email list or following us on social media. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your night.